Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where the joy of the Suicide Squad cast is infectious. Yes, David Ayer yesterday, actually late last night, tweeted a photo from the very first table read of the script for the film. And it really reminds you just how far away this film is from production, that they're only doing a table read now. And it wasn't even complete because Jared Leto is on tour with his band, so he is absent from the photo. But still, they look awfully happy to be there, and as I said, it's infectious. It really gets you excited about the movie. It made me very excited about the movie, and I know it made a lot of you excited as well, as a lot of you tweeted me this photo as soon as it went up. Now, it's interesting because yesterday they also released the Entertainment Weekly covers for Avengers Age of Ultron. So there was a little bit of a picture war going on there, and I think it was a draw. But I have to say, the Avengers covers are getting their whole own episode over on the main Beyond the Trailer channel. But that's because there's a lot more to discuss there and delve into with the vision, etc. Whereas this is a little bit of a broader story. Because again, they're really far behind even Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. But when you come to think of it, they come out the same year. So I guess that just shows how special effects heavy Batman v Superman might be, or also that they just had to position that film really far out to get it a competitive release date, which they then had to give up anyway to Captain America Civil War and take an early March date. But that could work out very well for them. I think you could release Batman v Superman anytime and it would make a lot of money, unless it's just truly awful. But I mean, I feel that can't be possible, can it? But I don't think we have those same concerns with Suicide Squad. And, just earlier this week we talked about, that the teases for the movie weren't so great. But I think with this one they nailed it. They stuck the landing. And perhaps David Ayer is finally getting the hang of this. Now, just a couple of observations about this. You see some new cast members. Somebody else is noticeably absent here. That would be Joe Manganiello. He was supposed to, of course, play Deathstroke. He dropped out of projects to pursue that role, but he didn't get it. And so, as you might have heard also yesterday or the day before, he has instead been spotted on the set of Pee-wee's Big Holiday, the Netflix movie starring Pee Wee Herman. So that is a very interesting second place choice for Joe Manganiello, and I hope that works out for him. But that, boy, it really shows that you take a gamble when you try and make yourself available for these kinds of films, these comic book films. And often, we rarely hear about the people where it didn't work out. Although one of those people is Jared Leto, of course, who really wanted to be Doctor Strange, and Marvel was like, not seeing it. And so instead he got to be the Joker. So if only it had worked out so well for Joe Manganiello. And, the party's not over, maybe sometime in the future, but I don't know if starring in a Netflix movie about Pee Wee Herman is the best way to position yourself for another opportunity. But we'll see. Maybe that movie will be really good. The other thing I like about this photo the most, actually, is the red script pages, to make sure it's almost impossible to duplicate, to copy the script pages. I think that's hilarious, and it adds a nice, fun production behind-the-scenes aspect to the photo as well. But then there are also some other people who are here. Now there's Adam Beach, he's here, and I have to say the diversity in this photo is really encouraging. And I think we haven't seen this much diversity in a film property and potential franchise, as this is hoping to be, since Fast and Furious. So I'm glad that somebody took notes from that franchise and that David Ayer is utilizing it here. Although, to be fair to David Ayer, his films have always been very diverse. But I think that the difference is that they have never operated on this scale before, being a comic book film or a big popcorn blockbuster. So I think it's very interesting to see him bring that perspective to this kind of genre. We'll see if it works. I have mixed feelings on whether or not I think David Ayer can pull this off. But he got the hang of the tweeting, so maybe he'll get a hang of the popcorn blockbuster filmmaking. The other person here, though, who really got me excited, besides Adam Beach, would be Ike Barinholtz. Now, Ike Barinholtz is a really funny comedian. He's one of the few bright things left on the Mindy Project, which has, I think, spiraled out of control in terms of quality. But Ike Barinholtz is really a funny guy. Now, there's this rumor going around that he would be playing Dr. Hugo Strange in the film, which I think is ridiculous, unless Dr. Hugo Strange is supposed to be played for comedic effect. I mean, there are lots of really intimidating, scary actors out there that they could get to play Doctor Strange. I don't know why they would go with a comedian. So my sincerest wish is that Ike Barinholtz is playing an orderly at Arkham, or perhaps maybe a henchman. somebody's right-hand man, and they have a lot of comedic dealings with their, colorful criminal boss. But if, a lot of this takes place at Arkham, so if he were to somehow be an orderly or some kind of person like that, I think he'd be perfectly cast and bring a comedic aspect to this film that I hadn't anticipated. So if David Ayer, not a huge comedy writer, can deliver that, I'll be really impressed. Unless maybe he gives Ike Barinholtz, who's a writer as well, the ability to, improv some of his lines. That could also work in his favor as well. By the way, you know who else is missing from this photo, which nobody mentioned so far, really? That's Scott Eastwood as Steve Trevor. He, of course, is promoting The Longest Ride, which comes out this weekend. I can't believe I have to sit through that tonight. Wish me luck. But I'll let you know how it is, and I'll let you know how Scott Eastwood does. That's one of the main reasons I did decide to cover it, because he's going to be in this movie, but he couldn't be at the table read either. So he's supposed to be Amanda Waller's right-hand man, so Ike Barinholtz can't serve that position, so we'll see how what the character is revealed to be. So I'm curious, what do you think of this photo? Does it look like a lot of fun? Also, a lot of people were worried about Will Smith being a team player. I think he's been broken down enough at the box office that maybe he is willing to play ball with the team, and you can see he's not dominating this photo. And that's the other nice thing. Now that I think about it, nobody dominates this photo. This is a true team photo where everybody's happy to work together and make a great movie. There's no one being like, I'm the star, or doing something to get attention for themselves. Maybe Jai Courtney, but that's just Jai Courtney being himself. And we're going to cut him some slack because I don't know about you, but I so enjoyed his performance in Insurgent. I saw a glimmer of hope there. So I'm going to go easy on Jai Courtney and give him the benefit of the doubt. But overall, I think that you have a real team aspect here, a real team flavor, which is very encouraging. All right, so that's the first story of the day. That's the photo, the awesome photo, which just made me so happy. And then we're going to talk about the second story is Need for Speed is getting a sequel, and that's because China demanded it. Some people here in the States demanded it as well. I'm one of them. I thought that movie was surprisingly fun. I thought it was really good. I thought the racing sequences were amazing. And if you didn't see it in 3D, that might have been why you didn't like it. I thought the 3D was really well utilized. But some people really disliked the film. It was one of those movies that you love it, either you love it or you hate it, which has the makings of a great cult hit, right? But it never really achieved even cult hit status here in the US, but the thing took off like gangbusters in China. Not like Transformers Age of Extinction gangbusters, but it made enough money that China is interested in continuing the series. So, and this is very interesting, fascinating development. So it made $43 million here in the United States, not good, but it made $66 million in China, and it made about 140 something, I think, total worldwide. That's not amazing, but if they can bring the budget down, I think they might have something on their hands there, especially if they increase the Chinese elements in the sequel as they're planning to do. But I think that this is really, really fascinating because we've been talking a lot about co-productions and how China is very eager to move not only into the US market but the worldwide market with their movies. And I think this is something that's going very quickly and could potentially be the first one of those true co-collaborations to hit the big screen, which I am just, again, as I said, so excited about. Not only because I liked the first movie, but because I'm excited to, to broaden our horizons in terms of the films that we watch. I think we're a little too insulated, which no other country in the world is, as we've discussed many times here. Everybody else watches movies from around the globe. When you go to a multiplex in any other country, maybe perhaps not Bollywood, but in India, but every other country, they have everything playing there. Not here. We don't have that situation. We only get our own movies and remakes of other people's movies and TV shows. It actually was the viewer question yesterday. So, even though the one red flag here is that even though I liked the first film so much, nobody from the first film is set yet to return. Not the director, not the cast. Now, I would make deals with them because, again, as I said, I really liked what they did. And also, I don't think any of them have ever really gone on to do anything particularly good. So, I mean, I would consider like Aaron Paul after Breaking Bad, nothing's really materialized for him. Although, to be fair, not for Bryan Cranston either, really. So it's hard to follow up a really iconic role on an iconic show. Harder than one might think. And I don't think Godzilla helped either for poor Bryan Cranston. But Aaron Paul, totally available. Imogen Poots, not doing that much. And then I'm sure the director. And Michael Keaton. I have to say, Michael Keaton, I don't know if you saw him on Saturday Night Live last weekend, but he was just so horrible. And the show was so bad and offensive. It had a German Wings sketch. Now, I know they were largely making fun of CNN, but it's not funny to make fun of such a horrible incident. I actually had to fast forward that sketch. And I usually try and give everything the benefit of the doubt because maybe they can turn it around at the end or there's some silver lining. I know some of you might take issue with that benefit of the doubt comment, but it's true. I'm telling you, I root for things. But I calls them when they're not working out. So everybody seems to be available, so I would think they would pick them back up. But as I said, no matter who they assign to this, it's going to have a heavy Chinese component. Not just in terms of the locations, which I think is so awesome. We're so used to seeing our usual locations for these kind of movies. How great would it be to race through China? They have some really amazing scenery there. But then also they want to include more Chinese talent in front of the camera, so cast members, and I think that's very exciting. So I think this is a great idea, and also people are speculating that this is because of the success of the Fast and Furious franchise, that they feel there's room in the marketplace for another racing franchise, and Need for Speed could be it. And then also, of course, Transformers. Age of Extinction did so well with the heavy Chinese component, where it made much more money in China than it did here in the United States. So I think they're feeling, while the box office numbers were only okay for the first Need for Speed, if they give it some Chinese nos, it could send it into hyperdrive. I would also say that perhaps they should consider signing Lucas Black if Aaron Paul doesn't want to do it. Or maybe if Aaron Paul still wants to do it, he could have a friend in Lucas Black. And the reason I say that is because so many of you were disappointed that Lucas Black didn't have a bigger role in Furious 7. And when I asked you in my Furious 8 coverage, Fast and Furious 8, who should take over potentially for Paul Walker, a number of you recommended Lucas Black's Sean Boswell that he plays in the films. So there's clearly a lot of fan interest in Lucas Black, even though he's not a big, obviously a big star here in the United States. He is maybe perhaps in the racing genre, so that's someone I think you could pick up pretty easily and pretty cheap, considering he's really just on an NCIS show right now. All right, so that's the second story of the day. Now, the third story of the day has to do with our friends over at the Hunger Games franchise, who have a very interesting opportunity courtesy of Lionsgate. So I think what's going on here is Lionsgate, of course, wants to continue the Hunger Games franchise. But I think maybe they have to take a pause, but they don't want to lose their creative team. They don't want to have them scattered to the wind. So they've come up with a project to keep them all in check and together, working together. So that means Francis Lawrence, the director, let's see here, Peter Craig, the writer. He also worked with Danny Strong, obviously, on these scripts, but obviously Lionsgate feels he's the main writer. And then producer Nina Jacobson. So while they were filming The Hunger Games Part 1 and 2 together at the same time, the head of Lionsgate came up to these trio and pitched them an adaptation of Homer's The Odyssey. And they bought it. They were like, I'd love to do that. So they're going to do an epic retelling of that classic story, which also, by the way, happens to be mandatory high school reading, I believe, in many schools. And I have to say, I think it's not, there are two kinds of novels that they force you to read in school. The ones that are a chore, where you're like, I can't believe I have to read this. And the one where you're like, this is surprisingly good. I actually discovered this book in college, but I would say Frankenstein is the same way. You see all these, the classic like 1930s version, and you're like, and then when they want you to read the book, you assume it's going to be that, but then you realize that Mary Shelley wrote something so wonderfully sophisticated and interesting that's still applicable to today, that, you're just like, Hollywood, you mess up another adaptation. You've been doing it since the beginning. So The Odyssey, I think, is a wonderful read, and I think it's so popular with people of all ages that you'll often see parts of it borrowed for other live-action films, and even, children's entertainment. Often, a lot of times, it's an animation. So I think that this is a really strong idea. And the reason is because you're taking a team that did such a great job of putting together a young adult franchise, and you're taking them and having them adapt a young adult, a book that's targeted at young adults. And that's a really positive application of this trend, right? To take the young adult dystopian or vampire trend or whatever it is at the moment and turn it into let's bring these young adult classics to life. It's kind of like how the live-action fairy tale trend is moving towards Shakespeare. That's what Joe Roth is doing with Romeo and Juliet, as we discussed recently. So I think it's really good to see like these things that maybe some people might feel are a little lowbrow, kind of like evolve into highbrow opportunities for entertainment. So very, very interesting. Although I'm kind of sick and tired of some people, being disparaging towards the popcorn films. For instance, on a side note, I was really upset about a Daredevil review I read in Hollywood Reporter, because the reviewer spent half the time saying, let's not talk about it, but let's kind of talk about how comic book things are pushing out any other type of artistry in the movie business now, potentially in television. And as I've said before in my Oscar coverage, it's like, hey, Free market, baby. People are paying to see what they want to see, and it's on you to create compelling competition if you want to compete with comic book movies. So it was really a snooty, appalling, I think, perspective to take. And that man shouldn't have been reviewing Daredevil. I'm very excited to watch it tonight, of course. So anyway, so back to the Hunger Games Odyssey. I think this is a really good idea. It's a movie I would be very interested in seeing. It's a great story if it's done correctly, and I trust this team to do that. As I've said, I thought that the Hunger Games has become quite sophisticated thanks to this team and its storytelling, and I think that they could definitely apply that, of course, to the Odyssey. So I'm curious if you'd be interested in the Odyssey, and if maybe you'd be more interested in it, or perhaps just interested in it all where otherwise you wouldn't be if it had the Hunger Games people behind it. And also, is that enough of a stamp of confidence for you? Or do you really need the cast? Is that really what you focus on? Is that what the Hunger Games is to you? Or is the behind-the-scenes talent is equally important, and do you recognize what they put together there? All right, so that's the third story of the day. Now on to the viewer question from Juan Nunez, or in parentheses, as he says, Exalazi. Juan, I'm sure you've seen him in the comments a lot. He's a frequent BTT commenter. He has a pretty noticeable avatar. It's like red with like some kind of symbol in the middle of it. So Juan, I always see your comments, and I'm happy to answer your question today. So Juan says, "Hi Grace, question. On several occasions you have brought up Black Widow's lack of superpowers as a problem that needs to be fixed. Is this a problem because Black Widow is a woman? Do you think that general audiences have issues accepting a woman fighting on equal terms with men in the MCU? Both Marvel and DC films feature powerless heroes, Batman and Robin, Hawkeye, Nick Fury, Agent Coulson, etc. And yet Black Widow seems to be the only one who gets called out for it. Even in the Seth MacFarlane bit that you have referenced in the past. Hawkeye is the one in the group telling Black Widow that all she does is kick. This makes no sense for obvious reasons. Also, I'd like to hear anyone ask, why doesn't Hawkeye get superpowers? If it's not an issue of gender, then what is it? Thanks in advance, and keep up the great work. I never miss one of your videos. Smiley face." I know you don't, Juan. As I said, I love your comments, and I always look forward to them. Okay, so very interesting question, and I think Juan is, of course, touched on something that I think to some degree is true. I would like to be fair, though, that another frequent BTT viewer pointed out, Lester, although I think Enrique Medea is his handle on YouTube and Twitter, but he pointed out that Robot Chicken did a really funny sketch which actually made fun of both and pointed out the correlation between the two characters in terms of whether or not they deserve to be there. It's a very funny sketch. I don't want to give it away, but I put a link to it in the video description. And thank you again, Lester, for sending that to me. But I think that the situation is that Hawkeye isn't that popular. Hawkeye has his fans, but it's never really moved beyond that core fan base that liked him anyway to begin with. So because he's not particularly popular, I don't think you have a bunch of people saying, why is that character so popular? So he's stayed in his own zone. So that's why it doesn't really come up, I think, with him at all. He's really a non-entity in these movies so far. And I'm glad they're taking, it seems to be a bit of a comedic approach with the character in Avengers Age of Ultron, where you see that funny line from the film and some of the coverage where he's like, "We're fighting a robot army and all I have are bow and arrows." And he also did a very funny sketch on Saturday Night Live as well when he said he ran out of arrows and he was going to go wait in the car. I thought that was hilarious. So I think Hawkeye, he's become a little, I have fun making fun of him, as you all know. And I think that's why you haven't really seen any discussion about him, because there's really nothing to discuss. He's already become kind of a joke a little bit. So that's why I don't think that aspect comes up. Now, on the flip side of that, the reason I think people have developed such a problem with Black Widow is that she is so popular. She's become really, really popular. And so I think there are a lot of people out there who maybe don't like seeing a female character become that popular. I mean, there are people out there like that, sadly, but I think that's a small but very vocal group of people. I think it's small, but it's very vocal. So don't let a couple of people just, screaming from the rooftops they're upset about something make you think that's how everybody feels. So I think that that's one aspect of it. Then I think the other is that some fans might resent that this character is more popular than their favorite character, right? Because, for instance, when they do the lineup this time for Avengers, Black Widow, I believe it goes Iron Man, Captain America, and then Black Widow. She's ahead of Hulk, she's ahead of Thor, and she's ahead of Hawkeye. So I think some people who are fans of those other characters are like, that's not right. It's totally right. Everybody loves her. Deal with it. And I think that it's because not only Scarlett Johansson's done such a great job with the character, but I think Marvel has done a great job developing the character. And she owes a lot to the Winter Soldier movie, obviously, and Joss Whedon in Avengers, which both did a really good job developing the characters. And I think that since this is Joss Whedon's last Avengers movie, you're going to see him working very hard to do everything that he can with the character before he says peace out. Because he has like a to-do list, I think, with Black Widow, because he works so hard to make her the strong character that she is today. And as one of you pointed out, I believe on Empire magazine, Black Widow is on the front of the cover with, I believe, Thor and maybe Hulk, or Thor and someone else behind her. So that just shows a lot right there. So I think there's a little bit of people, and you know, it's also, to be fair, people trash whatever is competing with their favorite. And Black Widow doesn't have a lot of fans in the comic book arena because she's never been a big comic book character. I had this Twitter argument with somebody yesterday about Carol Danvers versus Black Widow. And they're like, how dare you try and take away Carol Danvers' place in the MCU for Black Widow? Black Widow isn't popular either. And I said, you know, I never said Black Widow was popular in the comics. She never has been. She isn't right now. I don't know if she ever will be. But she's very popular in the MCU. So I think that discord, that disconnect, is potentially also where the problem is coming from. Because everybody in the comic book community is like, why are you all making such a big deal about Black Widow? She doesn't do anything in the comics. She's not that big a character. This is ridiculous. And then this is where the movie fans are kind of, you know, conflicting with the comic book fans, saying, I don't care, I don't read the comics, and I like her, and I'm going to pay more attention to her than some of who you think I should be paying attention to. So I think that's it. And then also I think there's still some people out there, again, this is a small but vocal group, who view women largely just as eye candy, and that's the only reason they should be there, right? They don't, and I think that some of them have a knee-jerk reaction to seeing a woman be portrayed as a regular person, saying, oh, now it's just all about feminism. Oh, you just turned this into a big feminism thing. Oh, I'm so upset about it. And it's like, no, it's not, because I think that one of the great things about Black Widow is that she's not a feminist character. She is a team player. She never tries to, you know, overshadow anyone else or make fun of them. She's just a member of the team, which is one of the reasons I think she's so popular. So I think you have, like, you're at a changing point in the way perhaps women are portrayed in film and who's watching movies. You know, there are more women going to the movies, and I just think it's growing pains. But I do think that because she's a female character, has a big thing to do with it. However, rest assured, Juan Nunez, I think the great thing is that most people really like Black Widow, which is why she's getting so much attention. All right, so thank you everybody for tuning in. That's today's morning movie news. Please write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories and the viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.